You are about to watch my interview with Adam from PushOwl. Adam is a data geek, and I say it as a good thing because data is the key to succeeding in any business. You need to have data about your customer, what they're doing, their journey, your product. Without data, you are just guessing. And honestly, Adam really opened my eyes to the importance of data and how it can actually be manageable to collect different data and use it. Adam had some great recommendations for tools to help you collect data in your product and business to actually know what you need to know to make good decisions. This was maybe the most energetic interview I have had during this conference. I hope you will enjoy it as much as I did. Let's watch the full interview. Play it, Chen.
Okay, I'm playing. Wait a sec. Just a sec.
I can't with these technical issues. Please come on.
Fire me. Okay.
Number one. We are here at Pursuit Amsterdam.
I am here with Adam from PushOwl. Adam, thank you for sitting here with me. So let's start with just introduce yourself, your role at the company, and what you guys do.
Sure. So I'm Adam Walker, originally from New York, US, living in Bangalore the last 5 years, and I work at PushOwl, which is a web browser push notification app for Shopify merchants, and my role is a product marketer. So I look at everything from where do we get leads from, what are the touch points, what's the conversion, becoming paid customers, and eventually looking at churn. So optimizing the entire funnel and life cycle for a customer.
Awesome. So a lot of data and a lot of optimization for the product and the customer journey. Okay.
Ideally, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so what would be your number one tip for a new Shopify merchant just starting out?
Yeah, I think the number one mistake that I see across whether this is software companies, this is e-commerce companies, is just a lack of data management, a lack of kind of data integration. So looking at what are all the different channels where my customers come from, putting all of that data into a central place and being able to visualize it and being disciplined about it. Because I think it's very hard to be able to make business/product related decisions, whether you target a certain customer demographic or you release a certain feature, if you don't have data to inform it. And at first it sounds scary and like you don't know what the heck you're doing, but there's actually a lot of off-the-shelf tools now that make it very accessible for non-technical people. And I am a non-technical person. And I feel very comfortable now after some time in organizing data, pushing it to different tools and visualizing it, and then making more informed decisions when it comes to product or business.
Yeah. So I think that's interesting because there are a lot of tools that make our lives easier,
right?
But it could also get really confusing and overwhelming when you're starting out. Like,
totally agree with you. Totally agree. Yeah. Well, so I'm going to make a shout out to a particular tool that's changed my life. It saved my marriage. I'm kidding. That's a little too far. I actually planned my wedding with it, but it's a tool called Notion. Are you familiar with Notion?
Actually, no.
Oh, okay, great. Okay. So you can call it this is not like data from like say Google Analytics or event-based data, but this is more just like how you run your business. So Notion, the way that I like to describe it is it rolls up a bunch of different apps. So it's your Google Docs, it's your Google Drive, it's your Evernote, it's your Trello board, it's your Google Spreadsheets. And so it literally rolls up all of these different tools in a very elegant way for improving information management personally and for your organization. So I use it for my personal life. I keep my taxes inside of Notion. I manage my journal inside of it. I planned my wedding. And then we use it very heavily inside of PushOwl for just general information management and documentation.
That sounds really interesting. It's definitely something I'm going to check out.
I would love to show you Notion.
Yeah, I would love that too.
They don't pay me to endorse them. I'm a passionate customer.
Get an affiliate
I
link.
know, I should do that. Yeah, click my affiliate link at the bottom of this video.
We'll put our affiliate link.
Oh, yeah,
at the
yeah,
bottom.
there's first. Okay.
So I guess you pretty much also answered my next question, which would be what your best tip for any Shopify partner and new Shopify app developer be?
Yeah, so it's just set up, be mindful of data right from the beginning. Look at setting up your infrastructure. It's not a scary thing. Like I shared before, there's off-the-shelf tools. One of the things so my partner, so she has started her own Shopify app, and we've onboarded ourselves onto the Zoho stack.
Okay.
Are you familiar with Zoho?
No.
Noho.
Yeah,
Okay.
no.
So Zoho is it's like a full-blown like ERP for small and medium businesses.
Okay.
So it includes everything from like managing your taxes to HR/payroll to your CRM to your marketing, your data analytics, your marketing automation. It's pretty crazy, and everything's just rolled up in one. It's also really, really cheap for people because like I work at a company where we've got a budget, but like personally I don't have a budget, and in this case we're paying $30 a month for an entire stack. And all of that data is aggregated, right? So if I get, say, a new lead on my website, somebody signs up on a form, then I can feed that into my CRM, and then I can feed that into a marketing automation tool to then trigger an email to go out later, an SMS, whatever it may be. And then boom, there, you've got your full stack, right? So that's one example of a stack. Other stack, we talked about this earlier with like Segment, where you're passing data from your, say, your server. If you're a Shopify app partner, pass your data to Segment, and then you can pass that data to different tools that you use in your stack. Say your Intercom for customer support. We use Amplitude for our event tracking and analytics. So it's a one-time API integration between your backend and Segment, and then you can port the data to all these other tools. And for people like me, I don't write code. But it's not a problem because all of this data I don't have to. Yeah, it's a one-time API integration for the developers.
Yeah.
Very low effort.
I think this is a great tip to just use all of these tools to actually collect data, because we sometimes assume that we know what our customers want, but when we actually have data, we can say, okay, no, we thought they would want that, but actually we need to flip it over.
Yeah, you've got qualitative information, right? You've got intuition, but ultimately you're limited by your data set, right? And so if you're an e-commerce merchant, if you're an app developer, obviously you're going to have a lot more users or visitors than the number of people you speak to, right? And so you can make more informed decisions this way if you're looking at the big picture. And Google Analytics is the easiest way to get started. Right? Everybody recommends it. It's the easiest way to get started. You can know how many people come to your website, come to your app.
Where they come from, what funnel they actually go for. I think it's an amazing tip for both Shopify merchants and app developers. Data is everything.
And by the way, I don't like Google Analytics. I almost call it like a necessary evil. But the thing is, I don't like it for data visualization. For collecting your data, it's very useful. But then I use another tool. So if I'm looking at my web analytics, so I kind of break up analytics into like product analytics, like where are people like clicking, what's my funnel like, people sign up, when do they say send a campaign next, when do people churn. But then I've got my web analytics where I'm looking at like where did people come from, what channel did they come from, did they read a blog post come here, do they come here from like a Facebook link, etc. And I like to use a tool called DataBox for visualizing that, because it's literally out of the box. It's an integration with Google Analytics. There's no code, there's no SQL, there's no like clunky dashboards like Google Analytics, and you can quickly visualize your Google Analytics data. And they have like pre-built templates as well, so it really makes it like easy to go, turnkey, out of the box. There's probably more expressions I'm not thinking of right now. It's very convenient.
I can't think of any.
Low effort. My whole goal when I'm working is really low effort. Yeah, maximum impact, low effort.
So this tool basically connects to Google Analytics. It just shows you the same data.
It visualizes the data. Because I don't know if you use Google Analytics, but I personally find it to be a clunky dashboarding tool.
Yeah, we use Google Analytics. It has a lot of useful uses, but there's a lot of like difficulties with actually seeing what the customers
It's not very
are doing.
user friendly.
It's not.
So the other plus point, I'll just throw this in there. When you're using DataBox, it also allows you to aggregate data from other sources.
Okay.
So let's say like You want data from your Twitter account, data from your Instagram, from your Facebook. So you can port it all inside of Databox, and then you can visualize it. So it's like, okay, well, how many people went to my Facebook page today? How many people left comments? How many people like referenced us on Twitter, right? And then it's all of that data is in one tool instead of like having to use 5 different tools and going to each and every one of them. And like that's friction, that creates like fatigue. And then that's the reason why people tend not to be very disciplined about data management and general, like being informed about your data being informed with your data. It's difficult. It's like functionally it's difficult as a human being to keep switching different apps. So it's nice porting it all into one place and visualizing it.
And you mentioned segments before that you use to actually get the data from the app, do the coding process once, and then use segment to actually forward all this data everywhere.
Yeah,
do you also use it for Databox, or do you put it in Google Analytics and then...
It's a great question. In a perfect world, I'd have one tool to visualize everything.
Okay.
There are limitations for each of the tools. Generally speaking, Databox is excellent for more of your marketing level data, whereas Amplitude is very good for more of your event tracking data. So it's like, I want to know, it's particularly useful, I would say, for like app companies, where it's like, okay, I want to know a number of people who signed up in the month of January. What was the average amount of time between signing up and then converting to a paid customer? So I can like visualize my pipeline that way. So I can look at the percentage of people who move to the next stage. I can look at the average time between stages. So that helps me figure out, 1, where do I have leakages in my pipeline, right? And then 2, where do I also have like more friction, more inefficiency in my pipeline? Because maybe I've got some step where there's human intervention required, right? And it requires an email back and forth exchange, and as a result, it leads to a couple hours or a couple of days in delay from moving that user to the next stage. So sometimes they call this pipeline velocity, right? Moving to the next stage, right? So those are the kinds of things you can visualize inside of Amplitude that you would not be able to do inside of Databox. Right?
So it's more the user experience and everything that actually happens inside the app.
Got it. You got it. That's right. Yeah. And so we're like, for example, we're using it also for some of our like product decision making so for example, reducing churn. Like, how do we reduce churn? Well, what are the characteristics of the people who leave our product? One thing we found was people don't send campaigns. Like, it's a minimum thing to do inside of PushOwl is just send one campaign. As long as you have one subscriber, you can send one campaign. So this was a hypothesis that we got by looking at the data inside of Amplitude. We were able to create a hypothesis. Oh, if people say send at least one campaign, they're more likely to, or they're less likely to churn. Then we ran an experiment where we pushed people to actually send a campaign.
On the onboarding process.
The onboarding process, So we built an onboarding flow and we nudged people to send a campaign. We had a decent amount of compliance in terms of completion of the onboarding flow, and then we saw a marked difference, literally like kind of pre-test, post-test of people, the percentage of people sending campaigns, and then the reduction in churn. This was purely data. I only have data to thank for this, because I could have spoken to a bunch of merchants, I could have spoken to my colleagues, and I would have just gotten qualitative information and probably just would have been really confused.
That's true. And
so I had a lot of direction using the data.
That's really interesting, because we do something very similar in ReConvert. We have, basically when someone installs the app, they have nothing. I mean, they don't have a dashboard. They only have a button to create the first thank you page. Because when they just installed, you want
what
them,
do I do?
You want them to know exactly what to do. You want them to like not get confused and where they're going. And we did it without data. So it's really interesting to hear that the data also like backs it up.
It proves proves that it improves both engagement and a reduction in churn.
Okay, so a question for someone who is just beginning. Let's say I want to implement some tools to actually get more data and use data in my service, but I'm just starting out and it's kind of overwhelming, all of the things we talked about. What is the first thing you would recommend someone do to start collecting data and start using it?
It's Google Analytics is the easiest one for sure, because you just drop in some JavaScript. on your e-commerce store, on your Shopify like app page. That is literally the most important and easiest thing you can do.
Yeah.
It's a 5-minute job.
That's true. And you can also use Google Tag Manager to like start getting some events that are front end.
Did they
with
click
no
this?
coding. Yeah.
Right? Did they go to this page? That kind of information.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so moving on to the next question.
Yeah.
What is the biggest contributor to your personal success, to your business success?
So I've kind of had a couple of different identities, all in the tech space, but working in different industries. So I've had a weird background where my first startup company was in Kosovo in Southeastern Europe. My second company was in Chile, Santiago. My third company was in Nairobi, Kenya. I had a very confusing period of my 20s, right? And so I was working in different industries, different roles, mostly as a founder, and then eventually I became a product manager. I sold one of my companies when I moved to India. I didn't mention that. I moved to India 5 years ago, and I had an exit of my last startup company, and then the company that acquired mine, I worked as a product manager. And that really kind of opened my eyes to this space of like, what is product management? Because I actually didn't even really know the vocabulary before.
Yeah.
Because like I was like, the acquisition was happening, and they're like, what's the job title for you? And then they realize like, oh, probably the best thing is like a product manager. Like founders are effectively product managers because they're full stack, right? They care about their customers. In terms of their sales, they have to know marketing. They have to do a little bit in design, some development, depending on how technical they are, etc. So, okay, to answer your question, I didn't mean to go so roundabout. Is I think it's really important to figure out like your niche, because what I've discovered over time is that there are just so many different functions, even in a small organization, right? That you can discover what are those functions that you are most comfortable with. And so what I discovered was that my background is like, as an entrepreneur, I was much more of a sales guy.
Yeah.
Like I might have like a shitty product, but I could sell it, right? Just because I just enjoyed that rapport with customers, meeting people, learning about them. There's actually a lot of empathy involved with sales, right?
That's true. Yeah.
And so I discovered that in the realm of product management, kind of where this type of identity aligns is on more towards product marketing, right?
Okay.
So that's what they would call this. It's kind of this, you can imagine a Venn diagram, right? Hey, we're in Holland, right? Venn is like, it sounds Dutch. It's probably Dutch.
Probably Dutch.
Oh my God, somebody's gonna like write it on the comments like, you idiot.
It's not Dutch.
It's German, I don't know. So, you can imagine a Venn diagram of like, you've got sales, you have marketing, and then you have product, right? And this is kind of this overlap of what product marketing is doing. They work with all 3 different functions. Now, that's me, but other types of product managers might be more design oriented, right? Other product managers might be much more technical oriented. Other product managers might be much more ops oriented. So they'd be interested in like sort of the internal tooling of the organization. They're interested in, if it's especially like, say e-commerce company, you got a lot of ops, right? There's like procurement stuff. There's like, obviously like fulfillment and returns. A product ops person would be looking at like, how do I optimize all of these types of processes, right? So I think the key thing here is just kind of figuring out where does your skill set align. In the beginning, you don't even know the vocabulary. Like if you asked me 3 years ago, do you know what a product marketer is? And I'd say, I have no idea, right? And so I think that's just identifying like what are the particular skill sets and industries that are most interesting to you will help you kind of discover yourself. Where do you feel more comfortable? What does it mean to discover yourself? I don't know. But it's like at least people like seek your help for something. And then you're like, oh, I have that function I can provide to people.
That's true, and I think it's kind of a combination of a few things.
What are you, Ruth? You should tell me what you are. Who are you?
That's a really good question.
Okay.
I don't know what my job is.
Oh my God, you have identity issues.
I am a co-founder, and when people ask me what I do a little bit of everything, and it's when you're starting out, when you're a small company, it's kind of necessary. Even if there's things that I hate doing, I sometimes need to do them.
Right.
But I think finding your niche, what you talked about, it's really a combination of what I am interested in, what I'm good at, but also what is still challenging to me. So if I'm really
and you
doing
find
something,
fulfilling, right? Because you want it to be challenging, right?
Yeah,
you get
exactly.
satisfaction.
Exactly. So I'm guessing for you, if product management was so easy, you would like snap your fingers. I can do that, by the way.
Yeah.
But let's say you snap your fingers and it just happens and everything works out. It wouldn't have been challenging enough. It wouldn't have been interesting.
Yeah.
So I really think that's a really good point about finding your niche and what you're good at and what interests you, and still like you develop
engages you, right?
Engages you, and you
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Good point.
Okay, so for the last question, it's kind of the flip side of what we just talked about, which is what is the biggest struggle and setback that you have come across in your career, in your business?
Yeah. I think. Yeah, so I shared this earlier with you. I think one of the number one mistake I made in all of the startup companies I was working on in the past, I think you can frame it in two ways. One is I think I was more passionate about starting a business.
Yeah.
And I think that's true for a lot of first-time entrepreneurs. So I want to be independent. Like, I want to be my own boss. I want to start a company, but they're not necessarily passionate about like the problem that they're solving, and they're oftentimes not a subject matter expert on it.
Yeah.
Right? Which is very challenging, right? And it's like there's a great expression. I don't know if you've heard this before. It's when you're of this mindset, it's like you're carrying a hammer.
Okay.
Right? And like everything, when you have a solution, everything looks like a problem, right?
Yeah.
It's like when you have a hammer, like everything looks like a nail. Like I want to create this product, right? And it will be able to do all of these different things, but that's not how you solve a problem. You solve a problem by identifying a problem first, and then organically working backward to figure out what's the most optimal solution, right? I've done this before I had an obsession with Chrome extensions. This is when Chrome extensions were first coming out. I was like, I am building a Chrome extension, right?
For what?
But I didn't have like a real problem, right? And so I just kind of fitted a solution to a problem, and it probably is not the best. It was not the best end kind of version of the product.
That's really
and being a Chrome extension.
I think now with entrepreneurship becoming it's already such a buzzword.
Yeah. I got pushed into it when I was doing my master's. I was like encouraged, like, hey, you're smart and you're young and you don't have a family and you don't need much money to survive. Go start a company, kid. Terrible idea. Don't do it, kid.
So I have a lot of friends actually that are.
These are my only clothes.
He's not wearing any shoes.
I'm not wearing any shoes.
No, but
I had to walk to Amsterdam from Israel. From India.
From India, that's a long walk.
It's a long walk.
Israel is not that long, actually.
Really?
But, no, I'm kidding.
Okay.
But I have a lot of friends who are like, if I had an idea, I would have started a startup and it would be amazing. And it's like, well, yeah, maybe, but there's more to starting a startup than just an idea, first of all. And second,
and it's hard.
It's
hard. Really hard. That's what a lot of people don't know.
Yeah.
Sleepless nights. It freaking sucks. I feel bad for the founder, Shashank. He's busy with everything. I'm like, I don't have to worry about stuff because I got my own like slice of the company that I focus on.
Yeah.
And he's like dealing with accountants and dealing with the banks and dealing with hiring, dealing with customer support, and dealing with engineers. Like, no, don't do it. Don't start a company, young person out there. What you should do is you should go work for a startup company first. At least for I would say for 1 to 3 years. Get your hands dirty. Do something. You're non-technical. Screw it. Go work in ops. Go work in marketing. Go work in sales. You learn a lot more than doing something on your own.
That's a good point. I think it doesn't even have to be a startup company. Go learn the skills that you need to learn, and you can do that in a job. Like I didn't work for a startup company, but I worked as a project manager in a high-tech company.
Okay, cool.
So that was, it gave me a lot of skills on how to do some things that I'm doing now. And of course, you learn a lot when you start your own company, but you want to get into it with a certain skill set. And if you don't have that, you're going to need to work really hard to acquire it with no money. So, it's not impossible. You can do that. You just have to be very disciplined and have a lot of money in the bank that is holding you up while you're learning and trying to develop something.
Yeah. And then sometimes I recommend to people do moonlighting. So this is where you've got your stability with your job, but then also, in the evenings, on the weekends, start doing some experimentation, because that's actually when you're going to do a lot of that learning. Like, you'll have your core skill set from the company that you're working at. You'll understand what a professional environment is like, and how to manage relationships with colleagues, etc. But like actually learning new skills that are things that you don't do day to day in your office, you can do that while you're still employed. You can do it in the evenings, you can do it on weekends.
That's a great point. Yeah, I totally agree.
Because then you're not putting yourself at financial risk.
That's true. And also, like, I don't think when you think about starting a startup, you think about, I'm going to work really hard.
See this? I'm not wearing any shoes. I'm not wearing any shoes.
Tragic. Oh, yeah. But I don't think your feet are black enough to have walked all the way from India.
Yeah, well, I found one of the canals, and I was just washing my feet off there. Yeah.
Yeah. So just as a last point, I want to add that starting a startup doesn't have to be, I'm going to work really hard and then raise millions of dollars and create a team and then work another full year really hard and then I'm going to launch my startup and actually start making money. It doesn't have to be like that. There's a lot of ways to make it way simpler. Yeah. And the more simple it is, the more likely you are to actually succeed when it's your first try.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What you just said, Ruth, 99% of the time it fails.
Yeah,
really.
Exactly.
It's all about kind of these small experiments that you have to run to kind of validate the concept, right? In terms of both your target customer, the product communication, what the actual product is, because you might have a great product, but you might have the wrong market, right? Or you might have a great market, but you have the wrong product, right?
That's true.
And so you shouldn't be over planning. What you should be doing is just running lots of experiments to validate these points.
Yeah,
right?
Start doing and see what's going on.
Exactly, yes. Start doing it. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much for this. This
My
was
pleasure.
Amazing. I'm gonna let you go have lunch now.
I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks. And
thank you, Ruth.
enjoy pursuit.
Yes, thank you so much. You too.
Do you agree with my takeaway from this interview, or do you have something else in mind? Let us know in the comments. I would love to hear your best takeaway from this interview.